He will chair this panel consisting of panelists from Spain. I would like to invite Head of the International Education Unit, Ministry of Education and Vocational Training, Kingdom of Spain, Mr. Andres Contreras Serrano. From Australia, the First Assistant Secretary, International Division, Higher Education Research and International Group, Department of Education, Government of Australia, Karen Sandercock. From UAE, the Director of Department Humanities and Languages, Curriculum, Ministry of Education, UAE, Dr. Samira Al-Hosani. From Indonesia, Center for Education Standards and Policy Institution, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Dr. Irshad Zamzani. And our final panelist from South Africa, the Director General for Basic Education, Government of South Africa, Mr. Hubert Mantanzima Mweli. I welcome all the panelists. And I invite our Honorable Secretary to take the session forward. A small announcement. A request to all the delegates present here to be seated for the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. To this session 1, we have 5 panelists with us. So we have Andre Contreras Serrano from Spain, Ms. Karen Sandercock from Australia, Dr. Samira Al-Hosani from UAE, Dr. Irshad Zamzani from Indonesia, and Mr. Hubert Mantanzima Mweli, Director General for Basic Education from South Africa. So a warm welcome to all our panelists, and we are going to deliberate on foundational literacy and numeracy, especially in the context of blended learning. And 5 different countries will bring in 5 different kind of approaches. Perhaps we also might find that there is a similarity in the way we are looking at foundational literacy and numeracy. You know, Victor Hugo once said in his book, The Future of Man, that nothing else in the world is so powerful as an idea whose time has come. And I guess it is the time for foundational literacy and numeracy. But we also foresee a lot of challenges ahead of us. Many of us who have worked in the social sector, we always find that a large number of things which are impacting outcomes in the sector we are working, which we call the social determinants, they are actually outside the system. So a child may go to a school, and if he is hungry, he may not be able to absorb as much as a person or as a child who is not hungry. If there are worms in your stomach, you behave differently. If you look at the sector for health, the way we have reacted to vaccination, again, has impacted the outcomes in vaccination, but these social determinants have been outside the system. And I guess that is what makes working in the social sector that much more challenging. I was looking at great intent at the presentation made by Dr. Manjul Bhargav, and he says that if the child is hungry, may not be the best thing to happen. If the parents of the children are illiterate, the boy or the girl behaves differently. If he's coming from a home which is abusive, because of mental stress, he reacts or she reacts differently to the kind of education. The second thing which we saw was the way we are accessing foundational literacy from the point of view of your income status. So higher income groups, their children are accessing. And I was quite happy to see that the upper middle income in due course of time has caught up with the higher income, the graph showed. But the lower income group, even after 2033, they will be accessing only 33%. For us, it's a great challenge because in India, where do the children of lower income group go? They go to public schools. And I presume this may be the case in other countries too. So there is much greater responsibility on people who are running the management of public education, because we need to up that graph so as to at least catch up with the other income groups. The last point I would want to say is that we are talking about blended learning. Dr. Bhargav said that face-to-face is good, and to the extent possible, we should not be accessing digital devices for learning. So I guess where is the sweet spot between not using a digital device or using it? So some sweet spot will have to be found, and it will be different for different countries and perhaps different for different classes too. Yesterday, in the last 2 days, we've had a national conference here in Pune itself. And on the 17th, we discussed teaching learning approaches and pedagogy for FLN in the context of multilingualism. And capacity building, that is yesterday, capacity building and training of teachers in blended mode. We had a clinical psychologist, Malvika Kapoor. The doctor said that until the child is 8 years of age, we should avoid giving any digital device to that child because it may impact the child in a harmful manner in the long run. But yet, during the COVID, we thought differently, but then that was a very different time. There were emergency times, but now that the schools are open, we are all debating to what extent we are going to use blended learning. And I'm sure that after our 5 panelists, they discuss, there will be more clarity. So without any further ado, I'm going to invite our colleague from Spain, Andreas Contreras Serrano. We are listening to you.
Good morning, dear Secretary, dear colleagues, dear all. Let me start thanking the Indian Presidency for their warm welcome and their amazing hospitality. It's really remarkable, the great job you are doing during this G20 presidency. And it has been an honor for us to be part of the working group under your leadership throughout all the process. We welcome also the notion of Basuheiba Kutumbakam and your priorities. We agree that most of these priorities are really relevant to the challenges that education faces today, and you have our cooperation in order to strive your meaningful outcomes to keep the momentum of Education Working Group of the G20. But, let me start saying 3 brief preliminary statements. First of all, the world is changing so fast, and education must change it at the same pace. As we share at the Transformation Education Summit on September at New York, United Nations, it is time to rethink education and to sign a new social contract. And from our perspective, this needs a humanist vision of education and the participation of the full community. So we have to do this together. Global solidarity is not only a moral imperative, it is on everyone's interest. G20 countries has both the moral imperative and the interest to make fundamental contributions to the establishment of solidarity strategies to help all nations of the world improve their educational systems. So let's include the society-wide commitment to include everyone in public discussion about education. like we are doing today with this seminar. If G20 don't do it, who else? Third, I would like to stress that we should focus on fighting inequalities. No education or training systems manage to decouple performance from socioeconomic status. Young people from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds are almost 6 times more likely to achieve at age 15 than those from advantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, suggesting that a strong intergenerational transmission of education disadvantage. As Antonio Guterres, the Secretary of the United Nations, tells us, education should change from being the great facilitator and don't become the great divider. So let's work on that. Let me show now 2 specific actions that we're doing in the Spanish government. My presentation is not working. Okay. I want to show you briefly 2 of the actions we're working on, referring to FLN and also digitalization of our system. First, as it was said this morning, we're launching a program to promote schooling in the first cycle of ECCE. We think that the sooner the better. The sooner you start with the kids being stimulated, the more benefits you obtain in the long run. Research over the last 50 years has supported the view that the linguistic interaction at early stages in children's lives, usually within the family, but also at the school when they cannot go spend time with their families, is extremely important for language-led development, attitude towards the spoken and written word, and future literacy. The language interaction and literacy practice learned soon help children not only to build a sound language base, but also to acquire more advanced literacy skills. In particular, children who socialize into participating in rich, frequent, and diverse activities involving oral discourse, as well as printed text, generally have an advantage in the compulsory stages of education, which in turn has been found to favor their later school program. According to what is sometimes quoted as Matthew effect, that means that young children who lag behind their peers in their language development in the earliest stages of schooling are likely to fall further behind as they move up through the educational system. So that's our objective, and we have changed and has grown 25 percentage points and reached 45% of students from 0 to 3 years old attending schools. That's our objective, especially when we deal with we need to bridge inequalities among students, analyzing the relationship between schooling in the initial stages and the decrease in early school dropout. It is ongoing, it is a progressive implementation, but the priority should be given to student access in areas which are higher in the incidence of risk of poverty or social exclusion, and extension to rural areas. Extension of schooling in this cycle has to attend the compensation of the effects that inequality have on economic, social, territorial, and cultural origin of the students. Secondly, I would like to show you a second program that we call it PROA Plus. It's a program of orientation, advancement, and on educational enrichment in centers of special educational complexity in order to improve school success and reduce early school leaving. And in order to do that, we offer support and guidance to students in situation of educational vulnerability. We spent almost 400 million euros from 2021 to 2024. For us, this special center has to have more of the 30% of their pupils are vulnerable. It means that they don't have assistance, food, housing, or basic supplies. They have difficult family environments. They have a lack of complementary activities, or they need specific learning needs. So it affects mainly, but not only, rural or insular centers, but also depressed areas with a great dispersion of population. So that's why we are working together with international organizations. We work with UNESCO, OECD, and also with NGOs, trying to work and support initiatives worldwide. For instance, at UNESCO, we attend the World Conference on Early Childhood Care and Education, trying to commit to invest at least 10% of the education budget on ECCE. Also with the OECD, in the OECD network on ECCE, and also an international initiative to the world leaders get kids in school, like organizing by the Bath. Finally, I would like to talk about digitalization. We have a national plan. We realized that only at Europe, at the European Union, only 39% of the teachers feel prepared to use digital technologies. Secondly, more than 1 in 2 young people do not reach a basic level of digital competence. And we really want to help them, investing like 4,000 million euros to try to achieve this digital competence for everybody. Actions aim at the digital transformation of education, including digital skills certification, at least 80% of our 700,000 teachers trained in digital skills, and also support the 22,000 centers, educational centers, in preparing and reviewing their digital strategies. Our strategy has 4 points, 4 steps. We work, first of all, in work to achieve the digital competence of students and teachers. Then a second line involves the digitalization of the center, trying to provide the schools in ultra-fast broadband internet access and also connectivity at home. We also want to work on open educational resources. And finally, we want to revolve around advanced digital methodologies and skills that affect the entire educational community. And also, we want to be aware of the ethical limits and the use of data and artificial intelligence in education. That's why Spain is going to chair the next semester at the European Union, the Council of Ministers of Education of the European Union, representing 27 states. And we want to launch 2 initiatives. The first of all will be Council conclusions on the promotion of common values and democratic citizenship. Education is about values. We need to work in the purpose of education beyond the job market or an exclusive economic vision, promoting civic, intercultural, and social competence, mutual understanding and respect, ownership of democratic values, and fundamental rights at all levels and types of education and training. That is not a rhetorical statement. We do believe that this is in danger, and we cannot take it for granted. The stakes are high here. And secondly, we want to work on promoting digital transformation at the European Union level. We're going to launch 2 recommendations, one on the key enabling factors for successful digital education and training, and the second one, Council recommendation improving the provision of digital skills in education and training, especially if we want to reach a priority on hard-to-reach groups and to reduce the gap, the digital gap between our population. Let me finish where I began. The FLN, the profound importance of literacy and numeracy skills and blended education in our system is the building blocks for success. So we have to work hard, believing that education can really change and help our students not only to manage in the world, but to become the persons they want to be. So it's time to reimagine education, and it's time to do it together. Pasuheiba Kutumbatam. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Andres. So you spoke about the EU quality framework of ECCE. And I think most important, spoke about building up of institutional capacity, filling up the vacancies, investing more in teachers' training, and investing more in education. And I think the basic and the final message is that education is about values, and it is so important. Thank you, Andres. Now I'm going to invite Ms. Karen Sandercock from Australia.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you, Honourable Secretary. And thanks more broadly to our Indian hosts for not only today's seminar and the education working groups held to date, but the way they have navigated us through a really important set of issues challenging all G20 countries on the education front. We are very pleased to be sharing some of our teaching and learning approaches and pedagogy for foundational literacy and numeracy. They are so important to every student's well-being, future learning and success. And so today I want to share with you some of the practical approaches that Australia is focused on, presented by blended and online delivery, but in thinking about how we can support teaching approaches, improve student outcomes, and facilitate inclusive and accessible education for all our students. Great. So in terms of our priorities in FLN, we see that as very much underpinning delivery of SDG 4 and recognising the transformative power of universal quality education. Foundational literacy and numeracy are the groundwork for higher level maths, science and reading skills, and we know these are central to social and economic participation. Australia is fortunate in having a strong record of foundational learning, and our students do well, performing highly in reading and scientific literacy against OECD averages. But there are many opportunities to improve to ensure all students are able to develop their skills. And importantly, a recent review by Australia's Productivity Commission found average outcomes in national literacy and numeracy testing as Mike, which is why we're particularly interested to hear reflections from other countries today. For Australia, our First Nations students, those in remote or regional areas, and those from socio-economically disadvantaged areas are further behind their peers. So how we identify and use best practice teaching and learning approaches, pedagogy, including the benefits of blended learning, is a real focus for us to improve our learning outcomes. Like many G20 countries, Australia has a multi-jurisdictional approach to education. The Commonwealth Government sets the standard and curriculum, but it is our states and territories who are responsible for the teaching and pedagogical approaches used to meet those standards. We are currently undertaking a major reform process to consider how we can work effectively across all levels of government to lift student outcomes across all Australian schools. It's known as Australia's Review to inform a better and fairer education system, the first of its kind for many years, and it will provide advice later this year to all Australian education ministers on what reform priorities should be included in Australia's next National Schools Reform Agreement. It's an opportunity to drive real, measurable improvements for all Australian students, particularly those at risk of falling behind. In terms of how we do that, we know how important it is to ensure teachers have high-quality literacy and numeracy skills. That is vital in terms of lifting the overall quality of our school system and strengthening student outcomes. Well-trained, skilled and knowledgeable teachers underpin a high-performing education system. And Australia, like some others, is facing a national teacher workforce shortage. So increasing the number of people choosing to become teachers and ensuring that those already in the profession remain is a key priority for us. Late last year, the Australian Minister for Education released a National Teacher Workforce Action Plan. It sets out 27 recommendations that all governments will take to address the teacher shortage. And a key focus of that action plan is how we strengthen initial teacher education to improve the quality of teachers in Australian schools even before they step into a classroom. So before they graduate, all Australian initial teacher education students are expected to sit a literacy and numeracy test to show that they have been assessed as being in the top 30% of the adult population for personal literacy and numeracy. This provides a nationally consistent way to assess a new teacher's personal literacy and numeracy skills, because we know that for teachers, having these personal literacy and numeracy skills is essential to being effective in the classroom and fostering these critical skills in our students, regardless of whether those students are in the classroom or online. We also have a range of initiatives which encourage and support our teachers to use evidence-based approaches, particularly in the area of phonics. The latest version of Australia's curriculum being rolled out from this year embeds phonics in the teaching of English, and it removes references to non-evidence-based strategies, such as predictable texts and the 3 queuing system. This year, our Literacy Hub is rolling out an online professional learning program, the Introduction to Systematic and Synthetic Phonics, available for all teachers. And we're investing in the development of evidence-based micro-credentials for teachers in 3 priority areas: phonics, explicit teaching, and classroom management. And these micro-credentials are available to all teachers at no cost. So there are a few practical examples of how we are working to support teachers at all stages of their career to improve FLN. In terms of using blended models and ensuring access, these are increasingly providing opportunities to also support FLN. But to maximise these opportunities, as our Spanish colleague said, we have to ensure all children have access to digital technologies and the core skills needed to use them safely and effectively. We have a range of initiatives to try and bridge the digital divide. For instance, the Australian government is working with our national broadband network to provide up to 30,000 families who do not have internet at home with free service. We've also embedded digital literacy into our school curriculum, ensuring students and teachers are able to manage digital wellbeing and online safety. and Australia's independent and statutorily appointed e-safety commissioner has developed an e-safety toolkit for school teachers and principals to provide resources to help them create safer online environments for school communities. But of course, none of this works without the teacher. Teachers must be empowered and equipped with blended teaching and learning approaches to help meet the needs of students. So the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership is very much focused on how they might do this. It's now headed by the former secretary of my department, an expert in educational assessment who also chairs PISA's governing board on student assessment. They are working to support teachers with resources in online and distance education, and there are many others. But what we know is that FLN has to focus on engaging students through dynamic content that prioritises teacher presence. Of course, it's not just about the building the capacity of our teachers. Parents and carers all play an important role, as we will talk about later today. And Australia has many initiatives through our national broadcaster and through other approaches, play-based and otherwise, to get resources into the hands of parents and the community. We're very grateful to India for facilitating today's discussions. We look forward to your reflections on these, and we look forward to hearing from you all on how we can improve foundational literacy and numeracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I think you call national literacy and numeracy learning progressions. And I think that's a very interesting word because progression suggests some kind of a continuum. We also noted that Australia has a similar federal structure like India, where the Commonwealth government, which is the federal government, sets the standards, but the implementation lies with the states. And I'm very happy to see a play-based STEM program for early years. And also, it's equally important to create a safer online environment where Australia is working. And I guess many of us who are working with children, we are very concerned about the safety of the online environment, the kind of cyberbullying which takes place, and also undesirable access to many things which children may get exposed to. Thank you once again, Ms. Karen. Now it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Samira Al-Hosani from UAE.
Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, our friends in this world, and our colleagues here. Thank you for this, your Undersecretary. Let me first, let me first extend my sincere gratitude, appreciation, thankfulness to India for hosting the G20, this successful, warm welcoming in this year. Throwing back for the first educational working group in Chennai, we have discussed together this fundamental literacy and numeracy. And coming back today to discuss this, especially in the context of blended learning and to ensure the optimal use of blended learning to help achieve universal FLN in the worldwide. When considering the optimal use of technology at foundational stages, it is crucial to recognize the significance of digital literacy skills of young learners. These skills are vital as they provide access to information, foster communication and collaboration, enhance critical thinking and problem-solving abilities, promote responsible digital citizenship, which is the responsibility of students, and prepare them for future employment opportunities. By equipping young learners with these skills, they become better prepared to navigate the digital landscape, make informed decisions, and thrive in an increasingly interconnected and digital world. One way to ensure the digital divide is mitigated is to implement comprehensive digital literacy programs that educate students, parents, and educators on how to effectively and responsibly use technology. These programs should cover topics such as internet safety, online privacy, critical thinking, and responsible digital citizenship, as mentioned. By equipping individuals with the necessary skills, they can navigate the digital landscape confidently. Content localizational and multilingual support is also important for the UAE as well as, I think, for the whole world with such programs to ensure that digital content and resources are available in local languages to cater to diverse populations, particularly with the multicultural societies. This can help bridge the language barrier and make educational materials more accessible and inclusive at the same time. The UAE is taking proactive steps to ensure that young children have the necessary literacy skills, including digital literacy, to thrive in the digital age. By integrating digital literacy programs into the education system and aligning them with national and global priorities, the UAE is equipping its students with the skills they need for lifelong learning, employment, and active participation in the digital society while maintaining a strong foundation in literacy. Like to provide some specific programs for kindergartens and preschools. For the kindergarten, or let's say for the early childhood programs, we have, for instance, the KG CCDI program. This computing, creativity, design, and innovation curriculum provides something like the kit, like the B-bot, this B-bot is a robotic which programs directions and teach students problem solving and critically think, building the understanding of computing algorithm. In line with the UAE's commitment to digital literacy, the Ministry of Education has implemented various programs to enhance digital skills among educators, students, and parents. These programs are designed to ensure the young children can effectively navigate the digital world while promoting responsible and safe technology use. One of the key initiatives is the multilingual digital framework, or multilingual digital literacy framework, which aims to develop cross-curricular digital skills, concepts, and dispositions among students in the UAE. This framework provides a structured approach to cultivating digital literacy and includes measures and tools to assess students' progress. As we come to a stage of assessment is highly important in this stage of blended learning. It is aligned with national policies and as well as the priorities of the government, emphasizing the importance of a digitally literate population. The Ministry of Education recognizes the crucial role of developing foundational literacy skills for young learners. While digital literacy is important, the focus on literacy skills remains essential for overall academic development. The digital literacy framework, the framework that I've just mentioned, therefore complements and supports the broader goal of developing strong literacy skills among young learners in the UAE. This framework, as well as not only addresses the acquisition of digital skills, but also emphasizes the development of critical thinking, problem-solving abilities, the digital citizenship. By providing training and the safe and the responsibility or the responsible use of technology, the Ministry of Education ensures the young learner children can navigate the digital world effectively while also nurturing their literacy skills. The digital literacy framework aligns with the UAE national policies, global initiatives, and goals such as the United Nations SDGs, particularly the goal number 4, or quality education. This goal aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, including the promotion of literacy skills for all learners by incorporating digital literacy as a component of the broader literacy framework. The Ministry of Education also emphasizes the importance of developing well-rounded literacy skills that encompass both traditional and digital literacy. Can move to the other. So moving to the second point, ensuring equitable and inclusive access to learning opportunity for all, the UAE has made significant efforts to optimize the use of technology for young learners or for young children as well, so while addressing the digital divide. MBR, or Mohammed bin Rashid Smart Learning Program, and the Ministry of Education have played crucial roles in promoting technology integration in early childhood. I would move to the third or to the second point, which is curriculum and methods of assessment for the timing. So in case of curriculum and assessment, the UAE curriculum and assessment education works on 5 drivers. So I would go over them quickly. So when referring to curriculum and assessment, it is important to consider holistic profiles of learning. The UAE Ministry of Education have recently been taking part in curriculum innovation that rethinks curriculum design, starting with the profiles of learning, as profiles of learning became very, very important. The chief purpose of a curriculum realization of excellence in students and development, which works on the 5 drivers as you see here. The first driver emphasizes the importance of instilling learner agency, where students actively participate in decision-making regarding their learning in a specific. This approach goes beyond seeking students' opinions and encourages students to set and monitor their own goals, collaborate with others, make informed choices, solve real-world problems, reflect on their learning process, and regulate their thoughts and feelings. By fostering learner agency, students can develop non-cognitive skills beside the cognitive skills, like perseverance, grit, resilience, and commitment, leading to higher performance and enhanced outcomes. As my colleagues mentioned, the values of education. This approach aligns with the concept of a growth mindset, where students believe in their ability to grow and improve. The second driver focuses on developing global competencies, or the skills, the 21st century skills. which go beyond traditional subject-specific knowledge. Global competencies involve applying literacy, numeracy, and digital skills to investigate issues, working well in teams or individually, considering different perspectives, solving real-life problems, and taking suitable, sustainable action. We can move to the third driver, which is one of the highest fundamental drivers, indeed, the well-being or the learner well-being, acknowledging the holistic development of a student in physical, mental, social, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. Enhancing students' well-being involves factors that contribute to their happiness and satisfaction. While the UAE consistently ranks high in well-being measures, challenges are still there, such as child obesity, mental health issues, and the impact of the pandemic highlight the need for continuous focus on well-being. Efforts to improve well-being should also address social and digital inequalities to ensure equal opportunities for all students. The last fourth driver is centers more on strengthening the collective efficacy of teachers and leadership in schools. Collective efficacy refers to shared beliefs about a team's capacity to achieve desired outcomes, particularly in terms of student engagement and learning. Teachers with high self-efficacy are confident in their abilities, embrace new ideas, and try different teaching strategies. Effective leaders play a crucial role in fostering collective efficacy by establishing a vision, setting goals, modeling values, building trust, cultivating a collaborative culture, and promoting effective self-evaluation and development. Collaboration between teachers and leaders is key to driving school-wide improvement. And the fifth driver, as you see here, something I can say it's really fundamental, as well as the foundational literacy, and playing a big part of the foundational literacy, which is culture and heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Samira. I think one of the learning for me has been that though we may come from very diverse culture, there is a certain commonality in approach to education. We're all looking at education, which is multidimensional, it is holistic, and all of us are thinking of how to bridge the digital divide, how do we ensure equitable and inclusive access, and assessment, which is so important. But I think one line in your presentation which really caught my attention was you write self-regulation in learning. I guess part of education also is to regulate oneself, and it's a very important aspect of our character. And skills beyond specific learning, I guess that lies at the heart of education, that from a general approach, we are being able to think of many different things to which we may not be exposed. Thank you, Dr. Samira. Now it's my turn to invite our colleague from Indonesia, Dr. Irsad Zabzani. Thank you.
A very good afternoon, Excellency Secretary of Education, distinguished chair and colleagues, speakers, all delegates and seminar participants. Thank you for organizing this splendid event, and thank you for having me. I'd like to share some of Indonesian initiatives in transforming our education system in the past 3 years under the umbrella called Merdeka Belajar, or Emancipated Learning. And at the heart of these initiatives is a commitment on making foundational skills as the targeted learning outcomes to which all educational policies should be aimed. Our system has more than 4,000 schools, which host more than 50 million students. And these schools are managed by 39 provincial and 514 district and municipal governments. And actually, our government has done a marvelous effort in boosting our school participation in the past decades, despite the ever-growing population and quite a vast system. Certainly not as large as India, of course. And yes, we still work on improving the ECE, or early childhood education, and higher education enrollment. Slide before. Okay. However, keeping the participation rate steadily growing hand in hand with the improvement of quality schooling has been our biggest challenge. As you can see here, our student performance in PISA has been improving, but not at the pace and level that we expect. And our own national examination or national assessment showed that half of our students are still below minimum competence in literacy, and 2/3 of them had the same in numeracy. This is exacerbated by regional inequalities, and we have 17,000 islands, and students in the eastern part of this archipelago usually suffer more than their peers in the western part. And the COVID pandemic deepened the learning crisis. It is like turning everything around against the clockwise. We in Indonesia suffered more because we closed our school longer than many other countries, according to the World Bank data. And the study we conducted in 2021 showed that our students lose the equivalent of 5 to 6 months of learning. So we had experienced a severe learning loss during the pandemic. And the following year, we surveyed the same sample, and we found that the recovery indication appeared, although not even halfway to the pre-pandemic achievement. However, the pandemic has taught us a great deal. We learned that we had been too ambitious with our curriculum, something that made our students as well as our teachers overwhelmed with too many targets and at an overly fast pace. Many of our kids are graduating without necessarily mastering basic reading or a basic mathematical operation. In late 2020, during pandemic, we gave options to schools and to our teachers to either adopt the full curriculum or a more simplified one. We call it the emergency curriculum. By this latter, we systematically cut down some of the essential achievement standards from each subject syllabus. And the following year, we ran a survey and found that students using this more simplified curriculum perform significantly better than those keeping the full one. And this gave us strong and evidence-based argument that we do need to systematically revamp our curriculum. Less is more. We then invited some of our brilliant minds in curriculum education to design and formulate this new kind of curriculum. And now we have what we call the emancipated curriculum, or curriculum Merdeka. And this curriculum has 3 features built into it. The first feature is simplicity, meaning that we reduce the competence standard, focusing only on foundational skills, literacy, numeracy, and what we call the Pancasila profile, which practically it's like 21st century skills for Indonesian version. It consists of religiosity, the global diversity, independence, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And the second feature is flexibility, meaning that every learning strategy is valid as long as it caters students' needs. We encourage teachers to differentiate their teaching strategies based on the formative assessment. In doing so, we extend the span of achievement standard from single to multiple years. And the last one, the third feature, is contextuality. Project-based learning is the game changer here. We allocate 20% to 30% of learning hours for this project-based learning. This is to help teachers and students connect their lessons to real and pressing social problems. More importantly, this also serves as an avenue to instill 21st century skills and characters. We can only teach character through experience. I think I can skip this. And as with this project, the government offers a number of themes, and then teachers can engage their students to decide which themes and activities are more relevant to them. The themes cover issues like sustainable development, democracy, cultural diversity, health, technology, and entrepreneurship. Teacher will not assess only the final output of the project, but the whole process that reflect any characters that teachers need to instill to their students, such as collaboration, religiosity, global diversity, etc. We also change the ways our textbooks and non-textbooks that circulate in our classrooms are written and presented. We want to make books more attractive, adjusted to kids' level of learning. This is to stimulate passion for learning among children, and all of these books are available to be downloaded for free on our book information system website. And to help teachers understand the new curriculum, we provide high-quality digital learning resources on the Emancipated Learning Platform, or Platform Merdeka Mengajar, where teachers can do self-directed and collaborative learning. Not only can they obtain high-quality teaching modules and webinars, they can also share their best practices and build communities of learning. And this application has been downloaded by around 2.3 million teachers and rated quite highly at 4.8 out of 5. And we aligned the curriculum reform with a change in our evaluation system. In 2020, we abolished the government-administered high-stakes national evaluation. Now we have two types of evaluation. The first one is individual evaluation, administered by each school and teachers. And the second one is a diagnostic system evaluation administered by the Ministry of Education. This system assessment is conducted school representative sample based to grade 5, 8, and 11. And the instrument includes what we call a minimum competency assessment that tests literacy and numeracy. Also includes a character survey to map the acquisition of 6 main Pancasila characters. And more importantly, it also includes a school environment survey that involves not only students, but also teachers and principals. And this latter survey measures the quality of school climate, covering school safety, diversity, and inclusiveness. The result of this national assessment are conveyed through a scorecard platform being provided to schools and local government as a feedback and tool to undertake data-driven planning. We hope every school does not take their annual planning for granted. We want them to also have the same frequency with us, focusing on addressing learning quality-based issues based on the verified available data on the platform. We also have to align the curriculum with the only high-stake assessment available now, which is the public university entrance test. Effective this year, we replaced the subject-based test with the aptitude test, so teachers can focus on the students who are more involved and passionate in learning, teachers who are relieved from the reduced burden, or school supervisor who sees supervision more as an act of assistance than audit. But challenges certainly remain as the other side of the same coin. To resonate with the former Indian president, the late Dr. Abdul Kalam, message, a school and its curriculum now should focus more on those who need attention the most, not only on those who already advanced, but particularly those who usually sit on the rear bench of the classroom because of their inconfidence and inconvenience in learning. It is possible that they are ones with the most talent in the classroom. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Rishad. I guess some of the brightest children can be found on the last benches. So true. And in fact, when you started your presentation, it said FLN through curriculum reform. It sounded, I felt a sense of déjà vu, that this is what we are doing in India. We are creating a new curriculum framework led by Dr. Bhargav, who spoke to you this morning. And we feel that this curriculum should be such that it should be able to tap the innate potential of the child. Assessment, I think, is extremely important, which you mentioned. And often we think that how you learn and what you learn to a very large extent is dependent on the way you are assessed. So it's the assessment which drives to a very large extent the way we learn. So very important point. Regional inequality, I guess in the case of Indonesia, 10,000 islands, and I think isolation, it exacerbates. We also have similar problems in India. There's urban-rural divide. But we often feel that some school is doing extremely well and many are not. And all things remaining the same, when we analyze what is happening, I think it's the leadership which is making the difference. One principal comes, one headmaster comes to a school, and the school just outshines every other school. So we have often wondered that how do I create leadership? How do we create not one, two, but maybe thousands of these emancipated, to use your word, and empowered principals? Thank you so much. Now I shall invite our South African colleague, Dr. Mbeli. Thank you.
Program Director, the distinguished guests, let me acknowledge the established protocol already, but also expressed sentiments made already. To acknowledge and appreciate the warm reception that we received in India, and also thank the organizers of this event and appreciate the excellent manner with which India is hosting this important event. Just a few points to make before I get into the presentation that I have prepared. The first one is that I'm making a number of assumptions. One of them is that I'm presenting to an audience that is able to read, write, and count. So I'm not going to go in detail into my presentation so that I save my colleagues the energy of coming up to remind me that time is up. I also want to bring you warm greetings and felicitations from the President of our country, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the Minister of Basic Education, Minister Angie Motshekga, will be joining us before the end of this event, as well as the cabinet of our country and the people of South Africa. I also want to make a very important point, making a contribution in this forum, that I fully agree that ICT is not a silver bullet, but also acknowledging that you ignore the importance and indispensability of ICT. You do that at your own peril. And balancing the two is always a very difficult act. Just to also indicate that we participate in these forums, Chairperson, to learn, and to use Alvin Toffler's words, to also unlearn things that would have been important to learn for a particular time and use them there, and also to relearn some of those that continue to be important. We also participate to collaborate and benchmark, and G20 offers that important opportunity. This is the landscape of the South African education system. As I've said, I'm not going to go through it in detail. This is the distribution of the home languages that are offered in our country. And I must acknowledge that South African Sign home language, we did not include it there, but it's a very important home language in our country as well. And across the length and breadth of our country, this is the distribution of those home languages. Not as many as in many countries that you are learning from, but this is the distribution of those languages. Foundational skills such as numeracy and literacy are extremely important for sustainable livelihood, and not only to afford us foundational skills for learning and for future, but for sustainable livelihood. And I'm giving the progress that we have made through tests that we participate in, like some of the countries that have demonstrated there. We participate in SACMEC, we participate in PILS. We also have our own national tests that we are carrying out. And we've made some progress. in this test. But also, as somebody said, it begins with early childhood development, and some experts are of the view that brain stimulation begins before children are born. Antenatal clinic activities are very important to stimulate the brain before the child is born. And therefore, in South Africa, we have introduced what is called early learning national assessment, where we determine whether children are ready for learning, and we test them in your grade reception year, grade R. We started doing that, and we are doing it every year. We had a national assessment before which we discontinued in 2015, where we used to assess from grade 1 up to grade 9. And teachers and academics felt that it was too burdensome, where you are assessing almost on everything. And they said there's no need to do it every year. So we replaced that by systemic evaluation, which is carried out in a 3-year cycle. We also participate in PILS for grade 4 and grade 6. Like many countries, if not all of them, we also suffered the losses of COVID, learning losses, but I'm sure you would have seen when the professor presented that the sub-Saharan Africa, we recorded learning poverty even before COVID. COVID just precipitated what was there already, and the surveys that have been conducted indicated that we lost 50 to 70% per academic year. In terms of the dropout and the survival rate, we've reduced that drastically. We've reduced it to overall in the system to 4 to 6% of what we are experiencing currently in our system. We have also to focus on rebooting and building our education system, because it's very important. We cannot assume that the impact of COVID is going to naturally take care of itself. So we had to focus on that as well. And we came up with what we call the big plan of ensuring curriculum recovery. And like somebody indicated this morning, I think is the professor, to say curriculum coverage is not about ticking the boxes only. It's more than that. It's about the extent to which learners are able to demonstrate the necessary competencies and being able to meet the required standards that are set throughout their learning. And we like to use the analogy of fixing the plane whilst on air, because you cannot wait for the unfortunate eventuality of that plane not actually landing but crashing. Whilst we focus on curriculum recovery, we are bringing in new learning areas, which are skills and competencies for a changing world into our curriculum. That's part of the plan. And these are pillars of the plan. I'm not going to go through them in the interest of time. In terms of curriculum and assessing outcomes, we've reviewed our assessment regime, and I've heard the program director talking about assessment driving learning and teaching. We strongly believe in that, and one of the elements that we have included in the new assessment regime is the one that we have included here. We've also ensured that we move in terms of connectivity, and the connectivity that we have made very good progress in is in the main in terms of administration. We acknowledge that connectivity for teaching and learning requires high-speed bandwidth. Our country is vast and rural, so we still have to depend on offline and online content that we have. The development of digital content becomes very important. Multi-grade schools. We do have multi-grade schools in our country, small and unviable schools, sometimes where you don't have the requisite number of teachers, But we believe that those learners also deserve to have quality education, and therefore blended learning becomes very important there in terms of the devices that we provide. But we also ensure that in terms of teaching learning approaches and pedagogy, we ensure that our schools have the requisite devices and are also connected. We provide, the progress that we have made in public ordinary schools and special schools in our country. And this is just to give an example of the progress that we have made. Preparation of teachers in integrating ICT, because just giving devices to them without also training teachers on how to integrate ICT into teaching and learning becomes very important. The issue of multilingualism is very important. The professor covered that this morning. We've come up with a policy to ensure that all our public schools are exposing our children to as many languages as possible, and that has become policy and the program that we are implementing. The issue of psychosocial support, including health, we are providing feeding to 9 million out of 13 million learners, over 80% of our learners, from families that are poor, that cannot afford to provide feeding to these learners. And we are looking at increasing this to provide breakfast and at least lunch for our children. Research and innovation becomes very important to validate the work that we do, but also monitoring in terms of the work that we do. Early childhood development, we have taken that over last year, and we discovered that 1/3 of our children were not ready to learn, and we had to come up with programs to make sure that they are able to learn. And the last but one slide is just to indicate our support in terms of African home languages. And we discovered that coaching becomes the most important element of improving learning outcomes, but unfortunately the most expensive. So we have to come up with other innovative ways to make sure that in terms of early grade reading, coaching also comes in handy there. And I'm simply saying in this last slide, namaste, in terms of our home, of our rainbow nation of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you, Dr. Maveli. I think your last slide, it brings forth the fact that we are all living in a very multilingual society. And when we are doing education, we are all struggling with how do you bring in a curriculum which is multilingual. So I think all societies are facing that. Dr. Maveli spoke about antenatal environment, how important it is. And I think ICT is not a silver bullet. We agree, but we're all trying to find our own equilibrium as to where we draw a line. And of course, pandemic has affected, but pandemic has been brutal for the disadvantaged. They've been affected much more than the rest. Curriculum, framework, new assessment framework, I think we are all doing similar kind of things, and South Africa is also doing it, and we're very happy to see that. I think we are running almost about 1 hour, 10 minutes late in our deliberations. So over to you.
Before we move on to our next panel discussion, we would like to felicitate our panelists. I request the Secretary, School of Education and Literacy, Ministry of Education, Shri Sanjay Kumarji, to felicitate Andres Contreras Serrano, Head of International Education Unit, Ministry of Education and Vocational Training Kingdom of Spain. From Australia is Karen Sandercock, First Assistant Secretary, International Division, Higher Education, Research and International Group, Department of Education, Government of Australia. From UAE is Dr. Samira Al-Hosani, Director of Department of Humanities and Languages Curriculum, Ministry of Education. From Indonesia, Dr. Irshad Zamzani, Head Center for Education Standards and Policy Institution, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology. And our final panelist from South Africa, Dr. Hubert Mantanzima Mweli, Director General of Basic Education, Government of South Africa. Our heartfelt thanks to our chair and panelists. And now we move on to our second panel discussion. The second panel discussion, the topic is role of parents, caregivers, and community members in supporting FLN in the context of home learning, socioeconomic skills, and health and nutrition of children. I invite Additional Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ms. Aditi Das Roth. She will chair the second panel discussion. Aditi Das Roth is Additional Secretary at the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India. She is responsible for Saksham Anganwadi and Mission Poshan 2.0, Media, G20 related matters, and Food and Nutrition Board. She has over 35 years of experience in government and has held various positions in different ministries and departments. I invite Ms. Aditi Das Roth on the stage. Our first panelist is Senior Advisor to Secretary and Director of International Affairs, U.S. Department of Education, Ms. Maureen A. McLaughlin. And our second panelist is Yu Zheng, Assistant Professor from the Beijing Foreign Studies University, China. I invite our chair, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ms. Aditi Das Roth.
Good afternoon. I'd like to first thank Secretary, Department of School Education and Literacy for this opportunity to participate in the deliberations here on this important subject of early childhood development. On behalf of the working group, it is my pleasure to welcome our esteemed panelists and the participants present here today as we discuss various facets of this very crucial subject. I have been asked to speak on the role of parents, caregivers, and community leaders in supporting home learning, socio-emotional skills, and health and nutrition of children. So I will speak on Mission Poshan 2.0, which is the flagship scheme of the Ministry of Women and Child Development. I start with a few introductory remarks. As we are all aware, the early years of a child, that is from birth till about 8 years of age, are the most crucial, as it is during this period that the foundation of a child's physical, socio-emotional, and cognitive development is laid. In this context, it is critical that a mother is well nourished and healthy during her pregnancy. Subsequently, a lactating mother needs support to be able to exclusively breastfeed her child for better cognitive outcomes. Then in early childhood, food which is rich in micronutrients like iron is required for continued optimal development. Along with nutritious food, children also need quality interactions and stimulation from their caregivers. Children spend the maximum time of their formative years at home, which is why parents, caregivers, and community members become central to their development. In fact, even after joining the formal schooling system, children spend almost 80% of their time at home. It is important for policymakers and educators, therefore, to recognize the role and importance of parents and caregivers to maximize outcomes. While I will be sharing in detail India's strategies and actions to motivate and enable parents, caregivers, and the wider community to take responsibility for children's nutrition and early stimulation, we look forward to understanding from our panelists about the models followed in their respective countries. We have with us today Ms. Maureen McLaughlin, a senior advisor to the Secretary of Education and Director of International Affairs at the U.S. Department of
a national level and across our borders. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share this particular approach that we are using, and I look forward to continuing to learn from all of you, and I thank our G20 Indian hosts for bringing us together on these important issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen, for that wonderful presentation. So your presentation mentioned that the full service community school model is an interesting example, actually, of how the needs of children can be addressed through the schooling system, integrating with the community. Your presentation also stressed on the importance of the community to the school and vice versa. Schools, you mentioned, meet the needs of the neighborhood, and improved relationships and attitude to school is an important outcome. So in a way, I feel there are broad similarities between our systems and that of yours, as both attempt to reach out to the wider community for appropriate service deliveries in the area of health, education, as well as nutrition. So there is just one quick question. How do schools and maybe daycare centers in the US communicate with families? How do they communicate with families and support those families in engaging with children in learning activities?
So the schools and the teachers and the caregivers and the after school programs and all come together to work together and to communicate. They can do that through a variety of different ways. Some of it is meetings at school, some of it is bringing in parent-teacher meetings, some of it is through phone calls, through emails, through back and forth, through training, through meetings that bring everybody together. There are many different ways to build that communication, and that decision is made, on a local basis at a school. But really, that communication, that, as I said in the theory of action, that trusting relationship and open communication across everybody is key to making it work.
Thank you very much. We now move to our next panelist, Dr. Zhang Yu. Can we have your presentation, please?
Thank you so much, honorable Indian hosts and friends, professionals and officers from the G20 countries. This is such an honor to be able to speak here. So my title for today's talk is about the digital transformation of education and social-emotional learning in China. So in the process of digital transformation, how do we care about the students and families' social-emotional learning? And particularly, what do we do to support the parents as the active participants in this process? So I will briefly introduce the policies we make and the achievements we are making in progress, and also the challenges we face now. So before I get started, I would like to invite all of you to briefly revisit the concept of SEL, social emotional learning. So social emotional learning is the process that the students and the adult learners acquire the ability and competence of social and emotional. So social and emotional competence refers to the ability to understand, to manage, to express the social and emotional aspects of daily life. So for students, the social emotional learning is about to give them a mindset and also cognitive foundation, the non-cognitive foundation for the following study and life in society. So it is self-evident that SEL is an important responsibility and a mission of education. Particularly in the COVID-19 pandemic, we do learn that many new forms and types of challenges regarding SEL happen, because SEL challenges have been discussed in regular education for a long time, and many research has been done. But what do we do to deal with the challenges in the time of online study and digital transformation? So this is something I'm going to introduce about. Over the past 5 years, the online education has been developing quite rapidly, if not dramatically, in China. and different level of governments like the Ministry of Education and also the highest level, the Party Central Committee and also the central government entity, which is called the State Council, co-issued a series of policies to and facilitate the development of online education and digital transformation. Unlike before, before these past 5 years, we just focused on the learning aspect of online study. So since the past 5 years, especially driven by the pandemic, the Chinese government has started realizing the importance of social emotional learning in online education, like the students' mental health, students' comprehensive development, and cybersecurity, and also the public safety education, physical education, psychological health education, etc. And most importantly, to support family and parents as active participants, the central government stressed out that the online education should not add any more financial burden on the family and parents by purchasing new equipment. This is a very interesting thing and new development in our policy system. So we do have some achievement over the past years. As you can see on the slide, we have a variety of online education platforms. And me as a university teacher and faculty, I used the first one to conduct my online teaching. And we also have all kinds of, particularly the Ring Classroom, the CC Talk, and the Class In, produced by some companies. They have added the technology of virtual reality and to let the teacher can actually control the process, and to add some real interactions between the teachers and the students. I think this is probably one of the key points about social emotional learning in teaching, interaction and feedbacks. So as of 2020, China's MOOC, published by the Xinhua News Agency, we probably achieved the largest scale in the world. We have so many options for the students to choose on MOOC platform. And as of 2022, basic education has already achieved nearly 100% have internet access with high speed and stable and safe internet. And 3/4 of schools have achieved Wi-Fi coverage. So this is some progress we have in the digital transformation, a basic foundation for better digital transformation. And also, as the Chinese central government mentioned that the strategy of Chinese digital transformation has been fully implemented, particularly with this platform as a milestone, Smart Education of China, SE of China. So the numbers are some achievements of this platform. And as you can see, I add some English subtitles here. So this is the first platform ever. We put all things together of different levels of education, different types of education, basic education, technical and vocational education, and also higher education. So this is the first platform also free open to all Chinese people, the teachers, the parents, and the students. You can learn all kinds of stuff on this platform. And as I said before, I won't read this slide, but this is a kind of like an integrated platform that also we can find some vocational and higher education resources on this platform. Speaking of the SEL practice, so unlike any other platform before that only focus on the learning aspect, so started from this platform, we add lots of SEL aspects, elements, like the teacher code of conduct and how to better interact and support students from the non-cognitive perspective. And we also have the family-school collaboration conductions for the teachers and for the parents and for the community to follow. And also we teach the teachers, parents, and students how to deal with psychological problems. And also, we also stressed out that to nurture the students' patriotism and the love for the people and also the national values are also important. So As a university where I work for, Beijing Foreign Studies Universities, we also have some actions to support the SEL in the digital age. Like we have a very strong press, which is called the Foreign Language Teaching and Research Press. So they have came up with a series of program which is called the Parent-Child Reading Guide. And the second graph shows the rationale underlying this program. And also, I think we have a similar question like our Indian colleagues have said, and also like our colleagues have said before. China is a huge country facing the challenge of regional and resources disparity. So as a university, we also conducted several programs like this to support the rural China and to train the teachers in a more effective way. And also in all these kind of programs, we tell the teachers it is very important to care about the students' non-cognitive skills, which is regarding the SEL learning. And then we have also faced some challenges, especially the COVID-19 is something like a unprecedented the online experiment, and we don't have such a large scale like ever before. So lots of new challenges and new problems have also been drawing our attention. Like some studies indicate that personal isolation anxiety, cross-media discomfort anxiety, and emotional twists and turns are the most common SEL problems in online education in the context of China. And also, another study shows that particularly the low-aged kids in China showed high levels of isolation, emotional imbalance, anxiety, and also the more adjustment between all these kind of problems. And another tip, I think, for a better digital transformation and a more effective SEL, I think we also should care about the teachers, because last year in China we have a problem which is called the online class hacking, which exerts lots of pressures on the teacher. As we all know, teaching is always bilateral, is always interactive. So focusing on the students' SEL, we also have to focus on the teachers' psychological health and the adjustment. So lastly, about the conclusion remarks and something we are going to do in the future is study shows that the family and companion and peer interaction, teacher-student interaction, outdoor activities are important. But actually, from my personal experience, so who should take the main responsibility for education, the low-aged kid, to educating the low-aged kids, the school or the family? So there are lots of debates. Last 2 years ago, in 2021, China adopts the first ever family education promotion law. So in this law, we're further demonstrating the family responsibilities, state support, and social collaboration, and legal responsibilities. I think this is a great step for us to achieve a better balance between the family and school collaboration and education. So also some scholars proposed that probably we can use a more suitable concept instead of blended learning, but we use integrated learning to try to solve some problems. So in integrated learning, it is how we actually allocated the knowledge related to different teaching objectives to the most suitable teaching methods, be it online or offline. And also in this process, we should never neglect the important roles of parents, particularly in the preview and review of the learning tasks. So I think this is something we are just embark on, and lots of things will be done in the future. And I also expect to learn how to make things better by joining all these kind of events like this today. Thank you so much, and this is my sharing.
Thank you, Dr. Yu, for that very illuminating presentation, which essentially speaks about the digital transformation of education in China. You also highlighted the importance of social and emotional competencies, the importance of online learning and non-stop schooling, the importance of psychological health. Thank you for your presentation. We just have one last question, and that is open to either of our panelists. If you want, you can both take it. It's a general question. The theme of the G20 summit is One Earth, One Family, One Future. How can we, in different countries and contexts, come together to share best practices in research, in policy, as well as implementation to better support children as well as families?
What you're talking about is really what we're doing here today and what we're doing in the working group meetings and in between, which is sharing our best practices, learning from each other, being humble about what we know and don't know, and really very much delving into what others are doing and what we can learn, knowing that you don't take a model back home and just impose it on your system, but you take the lessons from it and see how to incorporate it in your own system. We can do more of that. They can be done through all kinds of things like webinars and seminars and sort of sharing of best practices. But it is a key piece to what something like the G20 does well, which is that shared learning.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want to add one more information about so today the talk is between the officers and the professionals. But sometimes I think that the talk and the cooperation between the teachers are also very important, because teachers are the ones who actually make the policy happen in reality. So sometimes I think we can add more voice in the practices of the teachers and share bad experiences among them.
With that, I thank our panelists as well as the organizers, and we wrap up this session. Thank you very much.
We have come to the end of session 2. We would like to felicitate the panelists. I request Additional Secretary, Ministry of Women and Child Development, Ms. Aditi Das Raut, to felicitate our first panelist, Ms. Maureen A. McLaughlin from USA, Senior Advisor to the Secretary and Director of International Affairs, U.S. Department of Education. I request Additional Secretary to felicitate our panelist from China, Yu Sheng, Assistant Professor from the Beijing Foreign Studies University. And I request Deputy Secretary, Ministry of Education, Ms. Ritu Chandra, to felicitate our chair, Ms. Aditi Das Raut. Thank you very much. We break for lunch. A request to the SPD's Secretaries of State and delegates to assemble at the VIP lounge for lunch, and they are requested to be back by 3 p.m. for the third and final session, which will be followed by a visit to the exhibition. And the special invitees and other invitees are requested to visit the hangar area near the exhibition for lunch, and you could also visit the exhibition as well as have your lunch and come back by 3 p.m. exact here for the third and the final session, which focuses on capacity building and training of teachers for FLN in the context of multilingualism.